Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating it's Thursday, December 21st, 2017. It's the Winter Solstice and we are filming right about the time of the apogee of the solstice, which is probably at 11:28 Eastern Standard Time, but might be 11:38 Eastern Standard Time. We have forgotten.
That's true.
Well, I said that wrong. It's not that we have forgotten, it's that we have a difference of opinion.
That's true.
And so it's possible it's 11:28 or it's possible it's 11:38. However, the point is, according to the clock right now, it's 11:23.
That's true.
So either way, the solstice itself is going to occur during the filming of this session. The authorized souls in both the Lynn life and the Jamie body mind continue to be only child souls from the deeper, denser dimensions, even deeper, denser dimensions. And all other souls from all other dimensions, as long as those souls are already living by the Search for Truth rules assigned to the Search for Truth community by wiser minds above all of us and higher powers above all of us. And you guys who wish to argue with higher powers look crazy and foolish, and please leave us out of it.
That's true.
And the souls who wish to be here must also be contributing more to completing the assignments given to the Search for Truth community by wiser minds above all of us and higher powers above all of us than they are taking or using or borrowing in Search for Truth resources. As always, our foundational intention remains to do what is ours to do right now in all dimensions, to create worlds that work in all dimensions for all categories of sentience, since that's what our soul plans commit us to doing. And they're asking, why does that matter? Because we, all presences, do inevitably transition from one dimension to another, and
That's
when
true.
we transition into less dense dimensions, we are held accountable for our soul plans. That's all we're ever asked about. They're saying, what do you base that on? There was a period of the healing practice maybe 20 years ago where we were working with somebody who we knew only as Adonai.
That's true.
And we found him to be a miraculously wonderful teacher, and we learned so much from Adonai, and we would go anywhere he said. The souls who were here at the time, who were Malaya and Asha,
That's true.
and some others also, but predominantly Malaya and Asha. And he said one time, stand at the gates, and we came up into the other dimension and stood at the gates and watched people with their exit conferences or entry conferences, depending on which side of the dimensional barrier you're viewing the situation
Yes.
inside of. And we watched exit conference after exit conference after exit conference after exit conference for it could have been a couple of years, actually, that assignment kept being given.
That's true.
And they were 100% of the time about the soul plan, and the person would come in, the soul would come into the little cubicle.
Yes.
The supervising soul would come into the cubicle, and they would, where the newly dead, quote-unquote, person, the newly transitioned person was waiting, or
Yes.
soul was waiting, and they would put the soul plan down on the table with varying degrees of harshness or sympathy and ask, what did you do of these things that you said you would do? Never said anything else. What did you
that's
do
true.
of these things? And sometimes they said it with an understanding tone, and sometimes they said it with a harsh tone.
That's true.
What did you do with these things you said you would do? They never said anything else. They never asked, did you pay attention to your hair and makeup adequately? They never asked, were you making a lot of money and living in a nice house?
No, that's true.
They never asked, did you have status? They never asked
That's
any
true.
of those things. All they ever asked is, what did you do on these things you said you would do? What do you ask? Now, let's remove our focus from those people who are seeking to distract us from the work and hand up buckets of dead children from the depths from wherever Pan is working, which is usually as deep into the suffering zones as we can reach anyway, and see if we can relate to passing these through the scalp of that big guy number 801. And we're starting a new numbering series because there was a significant shifting event yesterday. We were able to watch many higher dimensions crumbling, and the point was made, they're asking, what did you learn from that? The point has been made that in all these series of dimensions, we are in the gap between when the tree has been cut and before the tree hits the ground.
That's true.
The tree is irreparably severed. There is no way for it to grow again in that manner that it was previously growing.
That's true.
It's broken, it's done, that's it. But it hasn't crashed to the ground. And so it's interesting that we want to pretend that just because we haven't heard the crash, we shouldn't all be preparing for our transitions.
That's true.
The truth is, for any of us, today could be the last day of life. And what do I know? I know this is common spiritual teaching.
That's true.
Live each day as if it were your last, but that actually means to do it. Live each day as if at the end of the day today I'm going to be sitting in one of those little cubicles, and I'm going to be looking at somebody who is going to be putting my soul plan on the table in front of me, and is going to be saying, whoever I am, going to be saying, what did you do on your soul plan? And this is why we're handing out dead children from the depths through the scalp of this really big presence, big guy number 801, and asking up. I feel like I'm standing in between scalp follicles,
That's true.
hair follicles on the scalp, and asking up, what now? For us, the collective of big guy 801, this guy, to live our collective soul plans. And again, I see the same view that we saw before. He seems to be trying to establish a farm in a kind of like a pioneering way.
That's true.
In an area where there was a civilization long ago.
Yes.
And they find artifacts as they're trying to dig a garden out of the woods, I guess.
That's
they're
true.
Trying to carve a garden out. And they feel very desperate, and it seems just like how it probably was in the 1800s and 1700s and 1600s.
That's true.
For European settlers in this land, that they don't have the resources they're used to having, and they're trying to make something from nothing. And he has found so many of these things that all they are hindrances, and he's just got a big pile of them.
That's true.
And it's clearly the remnants of some other civilization that has the tenor of this civilization that we're living in now.
Yes, it's true.
What do you ask? And they're asking again, now what is his problem or his challenge, his opportunity? What is he supposed to be doing? He's supposed to be choosing a good attitude.
That's true.
And his attitude is terrible, and it's fascinating, actually. They're asking what we notice of that. It's fascinating because the only thing we actually have control over is our attitude, and it's extremely widespread for presences to pretend that they can't possibly control their attitudes.
That's true.
What do you ask?
What do you ask?
It might be one of those evaluative processes, the interdimensional crossing evaluation processes.
That's
what did
true.
you learn? When they say, what did you learn? They've been asking, what did you learn all day?
That's true.
What did you learn? What did you learn? What did you learn? That's
What did you
very
learn?
much a typical question that's asked at the gates in those little conferences.
That's true.
Where if we didn't do much, we're asked, well, what did you learn? Sometimes it implies we didn't do much. Almost never do we
That's
do
true.
much anyway, though. That's how it goes. And what do I base that on? We were standing at the gates with somebody we just knew as Paul. Later on we realized probably it's the same soul that others refer to as St. Paul, but he
That's
just
true.
introduced himself as Paul, and we went with that.
That's
So
true.
we're standing at that same assignment. There was this place that we were supposed to stand. Charlie would say, stand here, and we'd
Yeah.
stand there and watch what was going on.
Yes.
And Paul one day pointed out, he says, you see that line over there? It looks like a toll booth. He
Yes.
says, do you see that line over there? And it was kind of like the express lane. And I
Yes.
said, yes, I do. And it was probably Asha, feels like Asha answering the
does.
question. And he said, what do you think is going on there? I don't know. He said, well, they've done more from their life path, soul plan, soul commitments, sacred vows to spirit, depending on how you want to phrase it, than these others. And I thought, oh, good. And I watched those people. And he asked, how much do you think they've done? And I thought, oh, it's less than half. I can tell that it's not 30%. It's not 20%. How about 10%? He said, no, they've done more like almost 2%.
That's true.
And that was the express lane, meaning everybody else had done less than 2%. And then we looked, he said, and what do you think that lane is? And we looked at it, and it was backed up. It looked like to eternity.
That's true.
And I said, I guess, and again, it feels like Asha answering. I guess they haven't done as much as the average. And he says, that's right. This is the bell curve, the vast bell curve of intention and awareness and what they've done. And those people have done more than the bell curve, and those people have done less than the bell curve. And how much do you think they've done? And the answer that we guessed, which he turned around and said, that's right. The answer we guessed was they haven't done anything. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero. Why do you ask? Oh, interesting. And given that they were backed up at the gates, you know what that would create? I do know it would create clogged astrals.
That's true.
That's what would happen. And I don't think there was an intention to clog the astrals, but that was definitely what happened. And the
That's
astrals
true.
are clogged with souls who haven't done anything whatsoever on their soul plans, not a single darn thing.
That's true.
And now it's after the solstice, which means the planet on which we are residing temporarily, in this dimension at least, the planet is now moving closer to the sun, moving closer to its source of light. The error has been corrected of moving away from the light, and it's coming back toward the light. But it's interesting that the wave of cold that follows it hasn't really even begun. The coldest part of winter is definitely after the solstice.
That's
the
true.
solstice is even labeled the beginning of winter.
That's true.
Why do you ask? The pencil point is tapping on the tree that's been cut but not fallen.
Yes.
It's possible that we are trying to make our way back to the light. And while for the collective it's too little too late, for those of us who are trying, this is the best thing we can possibly do, because when the situation implodes, as seems to be inevitable, we will at least have been trying to pull the collective into the right direction. And when everything breaks, simply by energy physics, we will go in the direction in which we have been pulling.
That's
and
true.
That's true for all of us, no matter what direction we've been trying to pull the collective. If we're pulling it into greater selfishness, boom, backward we go into what's probably an eternity of suffering.
That's true.
Why do you ask? And now let's hand up this bucket brigade of dead children from the even deeper, denser dimensions right through the scalp of Big Guy 801. But now, for us, the collective, Big Guy 801, to live our collective soul plans. Get out the smaller souls who want to go to the light. That seems to be the answer. Why do you ask? We're getting a message on the different views. The views of how it is to see any presence and how that presence sees the view from wherever the viewer is. How it looks different from different angles, and that is certainly true.
That's true.
Especially with these interdimensional communications. Why do you ask? And they're pointing to how the light is what they say comparative.
Yes.
And in a dark space, when we're looking into a less dark dimension, it looks like there's light on the other side of the portal. And when we go into that dimension and look down, it looks just like tarry blackness.
That's true.
Where we just were. And we look up and it looks like light on the other side of that portal, and we go up another dimension and look down in the dimension we were just inhabiting, and it looks like tarry blackness.
That's true.
Even though from the dimension beneath it, it looked like light. And so to really remember that there are presences who are suffering so much more deeply than we are, and they are to be found in the even deeper, denser dimensions. Our own selves are suffering deeply, and we don't have to think too long to figure out why that might be. For example, GMO'd foods, which it's illegal to label foods as GMO'd in the United States of America, and so we can assume that the food that we are buying is GMO'd.
That's true.
And the toxicity, unless we are raising the food ourselves, really, and know it to actually be fully organic, we can assume, and even then, we can just assume we are imbibing toxins, because every lake, river, and stream in the planet is polluted. There's
That's
no
true.
way to not have pollutants embedded in our food. So the combination of toxins and GMOs is creating a lot of suffering at the cellular level, and it would go a long way toward explaining the epidemic of cancer and other issues, but let's just pick cancer.
That's true.
That we see spreading through not only humans, but many other species as well. Horses and frogs are both really severely impacted,
That's
and
true.
likely everything in between. Why do you ask? I think the point is, by heading back toward the light and trying to get the collective to come with us toward the light, when this situation hits ground, as is inevitable, and breaks apart or implodes, we will at least be freed in the direction of going toward the light and not falling back into the depths. I think that's the point. Why do you ask?